Jai Hind. Today is 22nd October, a date that rings bell with many of us who are students of military history and who've been following the progression of India as a nation, and especially when it comes to Kashmir. This date of 22nd October has a big significance. By the way, today the day is being celebrated or observed rather as a Black Day across J&K. In this video, I intend sharing with you certain facts which are probably been given a backseat or have just simply vanished from the memory of our nation. 22nd October can be seen as a day which changed the course of history of the subcontinent. However, starting from 22nd October itself, if I were to describe the day, I'll not be able to do justice to this short story. So we need to go back a bit. On 8th October, on the night of 8th and 9th October, the first invasion into J&K state took place, and that happened at a place called Avanpatan in Poonch. Before that, and starting from 15th August, many cross-border raids involving abduction of females, stealing of cattle, and such like issues were happening. Pakistan, as we all know, was trying to pressurize the Maharaja, that is Maharaja Hari Singh, to accede to Pakistan, and the plea given was that J&K was a Muslim majority state. Yes, J&K was a Muslim majority state. It had about 70% Muslims and 30% non-Muslims, to include Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, and so on. Out of 70%, 10% were Shia. So whether it was 30% of population or 40% of population which was not Sunni Muslim, that is immaterial. For the Maharaja, the course of action was very clear. Pakistan was going to be an Islamic state. The very foundation of Pakistan was its emergence as an Islamic state based on Islamic belief, whereas India was going to be a secular state. It was secular, and after independence, there was no doubt that India will have no state religion. In such a scenario, Maharaja Hari Singh, who was aware of things happening in the border belt of Poonch, Mirpur, a lot of pressure was being exerted on the non-Muslims, basically from the people who were coming from across and inciting the local residents. And who were those local residents? There were 60,000 of them were from British Army, and these 60,000 men, well trained, supposed to be one of the best fighting clan the British had in India, they had been delisted after World War II. So they were unemployed in a way. And they fell prey to the propaganda which was unleashed by Pakistan and supported by parties like Muslim Conference, National Conference within the state. National Conference under Sheikh Abdullah, of course, had no tendency or no love lost for Pakistan, and for them the agenda was to remain independent. And even when Sheikh Abdullah was contacted by Jinnah, Sheikh had demanded the sole leadership of all Muslims in the state, which was denied by Jinnah. So Muslim Conference, on the other hand, was a hardliner group. Earlier, the National Conference had actually been born out of Muslim Conference. So all this propaganda went on, and these ex-servicemen were now acting against state in Poonch and Mirpur, and they were pressurizing minorities, Hindus and Sikhs and so on. And the idea behind that, such a tactics, few abduction had also taken place, some rapes had been committed. Idea was to pull out 9 Jackrif, which was the only reserve battalion of state forces, and that time 9 Jackrif was sitting in or deployed in BB camp Srinagar. So because of the pressure tactics, and then when Hindus went crying to the Prime Minister of the state, Meher Chand Mahajan, and Maharaja was made aware of all these developments. He understood very clearly that these minorities have no future in Pakistan, which is going to be Islamic State. So for him, he had no doubts in his mind as to which country is going to join. What happened, why the delay happened, that is a different story. I shall cover sometime later. Coming back to 22nd. So on 7th and 8th October, they invaded. Cross-border raids, no army guy will ever consider as an attack or invasion. As intrusions, yes. But 7th, 8th and 9th October night, when they came and forced the Gurkhas, the platoon, which was sitting at on button, not really deployed to fight a battle. They were there for policing duties, to police the border. They were forced back to a place called Sensa. Then few things happened. That is another story. In short, those developments then forced the Maharaja to take certain actions. He requested the Delhi, leadership at Delhi, and then we all know what happened. That is again another story. However, on 19th of October, as a progression of invasion in Poonch sector, there was a fort called Tharuchi Fort in Poonch, Mirpur sector, which was being manned by Gurkhas. Through treachery of the Muslim soldiers who were actually part of JAG forces, not the retired delisted World War, they were different. These guys were on the payroll of state forces. These guys turned upon Gurkha platoon, cheated in fact, called them out, the officer called them out in game's dress, and then they were slaughtered. Now, when that happened, 4 JAG, one of the best battalions which JAG forces had, a World War experienced battalion with 5 military crosses to the credit. The CEO himself was a decorated soldier, Colonel Narayan Singh. They were deployed in Muzaffarabad and Domail. This 4 JAG was a mixed battalion. Half of them were Dogra Muslims and half of them were Dogra Hindus, Sikhs. So a message went to Colonel Narayan Singh telling him that troops have, some of them have switched sides and they have done so and so things and treachery to and killed own troops in Poonch. So he may consider pulling out Muslim companies from Muzaffarabad, Domail and send them back to Srinagar so that they could be disarmed and put on normal duties. Colonel Narayan Singh, a true soldier, he said, I have no reasons to doubt my troops. We have fought together in World War II, and there were instances where a Dogra company under a lot of pressure was rescued by the Muslim company. Dogra Muslim companies are 4 JAG in World War II against Japanese. So he had that unflinching faith in his troops, which every CEO is supposed to have. You can't fight battle, you can't command troops without that kind of a faith. So he said no. But at the same time, he spoke to his company commander, a Muslim officer who was manning the border west of Muzaffarabad. There's a place called Lohara Gali and Ramkot. Between these two passed the so-called Muzaffarabad-Srinagar road. And any moment on that road could be stopped by troops who were deployed on either side of that road at Ramkot and Lohara Gali. And 4 JAG was well poised to take on any number of people because of their experience and because of the tactical advantage they had on ground. However, he spoke to his Muslim company commander and he said, I am getting these reports of many people who are now gathering across international border. These reports are coming through in addition to what he heard from his Chief of Staff, Brigadier Rajinder Singh. He also heard those reports from the refugees who were pouring in from Muzaffarabad, from across the border, from Atobabad and Abbottabad and that area into Muzaffarabad. The company commander, however, confirmed. He says there's nothing, everything is all right. And between the two kinds of information, one from headquarters as well as refugees and his company commander, he chose to believe his company commander. So on 21st October, on the intervening night, around 6,000 raiders with as many as anything between 300 to 1,000 vehicles, they come to the international border. They are welcomed by troops. That company, which was a Muslim company, they were guided into Muzaffarabad. And before people could get up on 22nd morning, Muzaffarabad was put to sword. Nobody was spared. Females were raped. Many of them whom they found not worth because of age or whatever, they were thrown into river. Sikhs and Hindus were massacred. And a whole day, those guys spent looting Muzaffarabad. At the same time, since these invaders were being led by Pakistani regulars, officers, JCOs, and there were many ex-servicemen of Pakistan Army, as well as ex-servicemen of Poonch who were part of the gang, they also came and attacked Dumail, which was this side of Krishna Ganga river. Between Muzaffarabad and Dumail flew Krishna Ganga river, which had a confluence with Jhelum at Dumail. That's why it's called Dumail, where two rivers meet. So they killed the CO. They killed their own colleagues. And by 22nd evening, they had whole of Muzaffarabad, Dumail burning. Now there are different accounts what happened that day. By one account, CO was shot dead during morning itself on 22nd October, whereas many survivors who managed to reach a company of Fort Jacrif deployed at Kohala to the south, they confirmed that CO had been able to get away after putting up resistance for almost 6-7 hours, and then he was ambushed later on, he was killed. Whatever it is, the day of 27th October was utilized by invaders for looting, raping, plundering. It was also the day when whatever is left of Fort Jacrif, a CO and few Jawans, they put up so much of resistance that they did not allow raiders to go beyond Dumail. Otherwise, had Fort Jacrif, that opposition not been there, raiders would have reached Srinagar by same evening, and Indian Army was nowhere in the sight by that time. Back at the headquarters in Srinagar, Maharaja Hari Singh gets the information about something happening in Muzaffarabad because Colonel Narayan Singh had passed only 2 messages during the day. First, when the invasion had happened, and the bridge between Dumail and Muzaffarabad, if that had been blown, probably raiders would have been stalled by few days, like it happened later in Uri. However, there was no explosive. They didn't have wherewithal and didn't get notice. So whatever information, the second message said that now we just can't hold on and we are moving out. We are destroying our radio set. So 22nd October by afternoon, the army headquarters of J&K state in Srinagar had this information that something drastic has happened in Muzaffarabad Dumail. Maharaja Hari Singh summoned Chief of Staff, Brigadier Rajendra Singh. That time he was wearing his full uniform, the Maharaja, and he said, let's go. I'll go and defend my state. When the Chief of Staff said, no sir, this is my duty and I will do this. And then he was told, okay, you do it to the last man in the last round. Dr. Karan Singh was present during that short meeting where he says that Brigadier Rajendra Singh got up, saluted and went away. The problem with Brigadier Rajendra Singh at that time was that with 9 Jacrif having already been moved out to Poonch in response to whatever was happening there and in response to the pleas for help by local resident of that area, Valley had no other troops. I'm sorry to say, by an account, by serving brigadier that time who later on commanded the brigade and rose to become general, he paints a different picture. But if you study the total strength of JAC forces as on 22nd October 47 in a bit of detail, you would realize that over 600 kilometers of frontage, those 12,000 troops had been stretched. In Srinagar, there was nobody except few tradesmen, cooks, washermen, few people who were training the cadets to be officers in BB Kanda training school. Total, with everybody taken, including Maharaja's personal guard, Brigadier Rajendra Singh could only muster 100 men. That's it. Couple of motors, and with that, he embarked on his journey on a wet evening on 22nd October. Before the main body of, so if we call it main body of 100 troops, which is actually not even a company, one officer had been sent to Srinagar, from Srinagar to Uri to find out what had actually happened. He was supposed to go to Muzaffarabad as close to Muzaffarabad as possible and then get back with the information. However, when he reached Uri, by that time the headquarters had some kind of information. So he was called back. He was called back and told to come back to Baramulla and await orders, because by that time Brigadier Rajendra Singh had started moving with his column to Baramulla. Around midnight on 22nd October, they reached Baramulla. It was raining heavily. He had a meeting with the district or local officials, and he told them to pacify the emotions or the fear factor which had set in Baramulla, and Brigadier Rajendra Singh moved on. They reached Uri in the wee hours and then took a halt. Now what happened on next day, 23rd, is a different story. But as the calendar was turning its pages from 22nd to 23rd, we had Brigadier Rajendra Singh, the Chief of Staff of State Forces, with 100 men in Uri. We had about 6,000 raiders or invaders led by Pakistani Army, regulars, officers and JCOs, and including many ex-servicemen and of course tribesmen. They were at Muzaffarabad, looting and plundering. A platoon of 4 Jackrif, which was deployed to the north of Muzaffarabad, had a MMG. By that time they had been firing throughout the day. However, they realized the futility of the effort. With the battalion gone, they also withdrew, and they managed to reach Srinagar after many days with a lot of refugees. To the south, there was a small post called Kotli, where again the Muslim troops had deserted. Luckily, they didn't attack non-Muslims. They just vanished. And the platoon commander there then gathered everybody and gave weapons to the local Sikh community and organized the defense of small posts at Kotli. Kotli is not the Kotli of Mirpur. This Kotli is just south of Dumail. And then they were preparing to pull out of Kotli. This was the situation on 22nd. As far as Delhi is concerned, Maharaja had toured Punch Mirpur belt and had come back on 21st, and he had sent a SOS request to Delhi for the help. You may also like to know that contrary to belief that Maharaja signed document on 26th by opening channels at 23rd, 24th, no, he had sent his Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Ramlal Batra, to Delhi much in advance. But nobody in Delhi was interested to speak to Mr. Batra, who had come with a proposal of acceding to India. But Pandit Nehru had a condition that he will only negotiate with Maharaja once Sheikh Abdullah conquers the proposal of Maharaja, and Sheikh Abdullah incidentally was under arrest for sedition. This is how we had 22nd October. What happened thereafter will continue. Jai Hind.